Hi, this is Mike Maloney, and I'm joined once again by Jeff Clark and Adam Taggart. And Jeff is the moderator. Jeff, take it away.
Hi, Mike. Great to be back with you, of course. And Adam, thanks for joining us again.
Guys, always a pleasure. Fresh back from Hawaii and can't wait to dive into this with you guys.
Yes, I'm very jealous. We're going to cover all our usual segments today, plus a great meme of the day. So stick around for that. So let's jump right in here. Mike and Adam, this first article we're going to cover for our news of the day is the article I wrote that came out yesterday on all of silver's spikes. And the reason I did this is I wanted to document just how spiky silver can be. And so this shows all the returns on these short-lived spikes that silver's had since going back all the way to the 1970s. And the real reason I wrote this is I wanted people to be aware of just how spiky it can be, how big the gains can be, but also how short-lived they can be. And really that you have to buy silver before these spikes set in, because if you try and jump on the train afterward, you're not only going to pay a higher price, you're going to pay a higher premium. And a lot of times silver just sits there until it goes and explodes one day. So the point is you have to prepare for those explosions ahead of time, like now. So Mike, what was your reaction to reading this research?
Well, my reaction is pretty simple. This is why I use the gold-silver ratio for my investments. When the gold-silver ratio tells me how much silver and how much gold to buy. Should I buy both? Should I only be buying silver, or should I not be buying silver and only buy gold? There's very few times that I've ever sold precious metals. One time just getting rid of some odds and ends that I had in storage, and they used to have minimums on each individual product. And so I was paying way too much in storage fees. Another time was because I moved to Puerto Rico and I wanted to start my, the way it's taxed is the IRS looks at it like, how long did you have this investment while you're on the mainland? How long here? And so I sold everything. I was out of everything, all of my precious metals for a month. Luckily, the price did not rise during that month. It fell just a little bit, and I was able to buy in, and I even bought more ounces, but I bought everything back. So basically, all I was doing was resetting my start date for my capital gains. And then the other time was during the 2011 silver spike. I bought only gold. Once the gold-silver ratio got down below like 40, I was not buying any silver. I was buying only gold during that time. And then when it went all the way down to 30, and I was still buying gold. And then when the gold-silver ratio got back up to 60 or so, I sold that gold and bought silver. And it would have been nice if I could see the future, but I can't. If I had waited until 100, but I ended up getting about 60% more silver than I paid for by using that gold-silver ratio. But basically, the gold-silver ratio, if you pay attention to it, it will prevent you from being a victim of these spikes, and it will give you the opportunity that these spikes offer.
Yes, very good. And the gold-silver ratio is falling, of course, when silver goes on one of these spikes because it outperforms gold, as history clearly shows. So, Adam, what do you think? Spiky silver.
Yeah, spiky silver. It is very spiky. I thought the piece was brilliantly written, if I may say so, Jeff. And I was nodding along with Mike. I think, it just, begs the question of the importance of the gold-silver ratio and using that as a guide. I think the only intelligent thing that I might be able to add to what Mike already said is, I spend a lot of my time talking to financial advisors and to investors and economists and whatnot. And one of the techniques that financial advisors will recommend if you have a larger position in the metals is when silver does go on one of those spikes and looking at the gold-silver ratio when it is at an excessive high, as you said, Jeff, these are spikes. They go up, they come down. And what a tactic that people will use sometimes is to purchase put options against your position so that if it is indeed a spike that comes back down, you're actually limiting your downside exposure. right? So it's like buying a bit of insurance. This isn't a speculative play. It's really more of a defensive play. And it makes sense on larger positions. If you just sort of have a small stash, it's probably not worth taking on the cost of the insurance for that. You just want to just hold it, and it'll be another spike at some point in the future. But in addition to using the gold silver ratio as a way to know when to buy more gold or buy more silver, it also can be a good indicator as to when it makes sense to buy some downside protection.
Yeah, good input. That's a good point. Yeah. So is silver destined to be just spiky again in the future? In Mike's big scenario and what's ahead? Well, read the end of the article there and you'll see what we think. So, well, on to tweet of the day, you guys. This is from Grant Williams, who I really like. And his comment is hubris alert. And this is a real quick clip from Ben Rickert of the European Central Bank president, Christine Lagarde, basically saying, well, investors can test us as much as they want. And she's kind of implying that, we're prepared for anything. Nothing can break the system. We're kind of impervious. It's kind of the message she's giving. So, Mike, what was your reaction to Christine Lagarde's statement?
The arrogance of these people never ceases to amaze me. It just reminds me of Ben Bernanke thinking that he was master of the universe and that there will be no consequences from his actions. And she said that they are riveted to these targets. This is like their mission, and basically investors can take a flying leap off a cliff, and the markets. That means she doesn't care about anything. She's got her target. She's going to do it. And it doesn't matter what havoc it wreaks. So,
yes,
I don't know. It's just, I truly believe with people like this that we are nearing the end game of this monetary system, because they really think that that this will work. They believe that it doesn't matter. The Bank of Japan has proven that Keynesian economics for the past 30 years, they've been proving that Keynesian economics doesn't work, that this stuff just causes stagnation in an economy and a wealth transfer. And they prove it year after year. And then these people go, oh, well, it wasn't our theories that were wrong. It wasn't us that were wrong. It was that we didn't do enough of it. So we've got to double down on this thing. And then it still doesn't work. And then they double down on that. So how do you feel about it, Adam?
Gosh, I feel the same way. And it's really ironic that the central banks are just infamous for not being able to hit any of their targets that they put out there, except for their currency printing targets, which they tend to blow through. So the only ones they hit are the ones that probably do the most destruction in this situation. But I will say, yes, I think you used a great word, Mike, there, which was arrogance, and I think Grant mentioned hubris. But I will say, don't underestimate their resolve. I think she is absolutely speaking her truth when she says, we are riveted and we are going to do whatever it takes. They literally have an unlimited source of ammunition there. And really, they have all of the air cover to continue to do this. Right now, they have markets that are addicted to the liquidity that are sloshing around the world right now, and investors that just keep an investing public that just keeps clamoring for more. There's the weak economy, the weak job market. So they've got a lot of pressure to step in to help that out. They've obviously got the pandemic, which they can almost use as sort of a blank check to do whatever they want to do to help the world combat that. But lastly, and very importantly, there are vulnerable politicians right now, right? We had, Biden's brand new in office, and he's really trying to kind of, curry the public's favor. And he's out there, selling, he just passed a 1.9 trillion stimulus bill into law, and he's just proposed another 2+ infrastructure stimulus bill. Some say that might be as much as 4 trillion by the time it's all done. Angela Merkel's in a similar position in the EU. She's retiring, but her party is very weak right now. So the politicians are looking to the central banks to continue the largesse. So I think there's nothing stopping these central banks. There's nothing standing in their way of continuing to do this destructive currency printing.
I agree.
Yes. Yeah, very good. Well, if you're liking this video, please hit that like button for us down below there and subscribe to our channel. So on to chart of the day, guys.
Before you get to that, Jeff, there's one thing that I want to say about Adam's comment. He said the weak job market. And in some sectors, it is weak. But what I'm finding, I was just out at a restaurant last night, and they've got the same problem at the restaurant that I've got with the little farm that I bought. We had a bunch of them when the employees at the farm realized that we were walking the straight and narrow when it comes to the legality of paying people. We have to deduct 10% of everything that we pay, and then we file a tax return every single month with the government of Puerto Rico. We turn that over, and they realized that since this was getting reported, that they were going to lose their coupons, they're called, their food stamps. So they're all of them are on government assistance, and so they all quit because the government is paying them not to work, and it's much easier to not work. They do cash work on the side for extra cash, but they all quit. And so it's very difficult to hire people legitimately and get them to actually work for a living because the government, you're in competition now with the government. The restaurant that I was at last night, the food was taking a long time. And he said, we're trying to hire more people, but we can't. Nobody will work because the government is paying them not to. So we're currently in competition with the government. And then the number of tourists down here, and it's a completely different type of tourist than before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, it was the cruise boat crowd. And now what we're seeing is it's the stimulus check crowd. Anybody that receives a stimulus check and can hop on these super cheap flights that they've got right now is coming down here for a vacation. So it's a this is people hunting for a bar that isn't closing and getting in fights in the streets and doing graffiti and stuff. It's a completely different crowd. And so this competition with the government, the weak jobs market is weak, not necessarily because there aren't jobs out there, but partially because people are just refusing to go to work because the government is paying them not to.
Well, history is replete of government policies that basically create all sorts of unintended consequences that sabotage the original intent. And this is just no different, Mike. You're absolutely right.
Well, now on to chart of the day. This is from Amelia Dye. If you want corporations to pay tax, stop making so many loopholes for the companies with the best lobbyists. This tax will fall on small and medium-sized businesses while the big corporations move elsewhere. Just ask Australia. A high corporate tax doesn't work. And what she's referencing here is a tweet from the Tax Foundation about President Biden's proposal, basically to pay for this infrastructure bill in part by raising taxes. And this chart shows what would happen to the US tax base if Biden's plan went through. You can see the darker bar down halfway down there, what our current tax situation is in the US compared to other advanced economies, and the red bar at the top, what it would be if this proposal went through. So, Mike, what's your reaction? Let's do all this infrastructure spending and raise taxes on corporations.
Let's get Adam's viewpoint first. I'm going to save mine for the end here.
Okay. Well, the government really doesn't have too many levers that it pulls, and certainly the more taxes one is, it's a very convenient one for it. We've got a Democratic administration in now, and I think it's a surprise to nobody that we're seeing more taxes coming to pay for all of this grandiosity that's being promised. I think I just want to go back to history for a moment and say, look, this is continuing an arc that we've seen for, generations. Back in World War II, believe it or not, the highest federal income tax bracket was 94%. Now, very few people actually paid that for two reasons. One, there weren't that many people making enough money to be taxed at that bracket, but also to the point of the tweet, those rich people were finding ways and loopholes to not have to pay that tax. And the government kind of cut onto this. And so what they did is they lowered the tax rates, but they expanded it to a much wider, broader set of the population. So instead of having few people pay a very high tax rate, you had a lot more people paying a slightly lower tax rate. And we've seen that progression go on and on as the government keeps trying to maximize the tax income coming into its coffers. And uh, I think this is why I believe that the government is actually a big fan of moving at some point to a digital federal currency, because then not only will it have other abilities, but it'll know where every single dollar is and what it's being spent on. And so right now, there's a fair amount of the economy that's still a cash economy and is largely untaxed. It's invisible to the government. When they switch to a digital currency, they will have visibility across 100% of the currency base, and you can bet your bottom digital dollar that they'll be taxing every one of those as best they can.
Yes, I absolutely agree. But one of the things that people don't, first of all, you said one of the things that happens when you do this is you scare businesses away from the United States. That's, if every other country has less cost of taxes, businesses have to go to where they're treated best. And so you're scaring companies out of the United States when you do that. Second, corporations don't pay tax. The purchaser of the goods and services that the corporations create pay the tax. Corporations it's a cost that gets passed on to the consumer. All corporations are trying to gain as much market share as possible. And they're trying to make themselves as efficient as possible, squeeze down their prices so that they can gain market share from their competitors. The corporate structure, the free markets work very good if you leave them alone and just let people compete. Competing for the biggest market share, you've got to build the best product and offer it at the lowest prices, or create the best service at the lowest prices. When you introduce big taxation to corporations, all corporations have to raise their prices to cover those taxes, because as a precious metals dealer, our margins are razor thin. If you raise the tax on us, we have to make sure that we stay in business. All businesses want to stay in business, and so all these costs just get passed on to the consumer. And it amazes me that politicians can sell this to the public, because they've got to know that when you increase the cost of business, the price of goods and services has to go up. Otherwise, the businesses go under. There's just no other choice. Simple economics. And so businesses actually don't pay tax. The consumer pays the tax through the business by the increased cost of the goods or services. So all this proposal is we're going to raise the price of everything on the consumer. That's what the proposal is. Yeah. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, that's all true, Mike. And I think the only thing I want to add to that is I think this is going to the comment of the tweet poster there, is it is going to continue the hollowing out of small and medium-sized American businesses, because they cannot afford to pass those costs along to the consumer as much as the big corporations can. Big corporations can move some of their profits offshore. They can even incorporate offshore and whatnot. Or they can just, last for longer if they're going to have a loss lead, product offering and try to outlast the competition. But the small mom and pop shops, the mid-sized companies, they have a lot less ability to do that. And they are already under siege on so many levels right now that we are really just kind of, again, hollowing out our economy and just leaving it with these big global, megacorps that are hoovering up all that's left. And I do think there's a big question of what kind of economy do we want to have going forward? And I think if we look at the trajectory we're on, it's headed to a place we do not want to go.
I think you're absolutely correct. I've often said that because we don't have capitalism and we don't have free markets. We've got cronyism and manipulated markets. And if we had capitalism and free markets, you wouldn't see this happening. But when you're a company like Apple, and you can spend $100 million a year on CPAs and another $100 million a year on tax attorneys to figure out all of the loopholes, you've got this tremendous advantage by having your corporation in Ireland, and all of your intellectual property goes into that corporation, and then there's like one employee or something in Ireland that gets paid, so there's no costs, but you get all those tax advantages. And all this law will do is scare businesses away from the United States and cause all of the small businesses to have to suffer. They're going to be but because they all have to raise their costs, their prices to cover the increased costs, but companies like Apple won't have to raise their costs.
Exactly.
So, their competition from overseas is going to just slaughter them. It's really a shame. And politicians never see the unintended consequences, or if they do, they're just selling this lie to get elected, to look magnanimous.
Exactly, because by the time the chickens come home to roost, hopefully someone else is in office then, and it's their problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. Boy, good input, you guys. I really appreciate that. And bottom line is there will be implications to raising taxes to that extent. So, well, on to some viewer feedback. This is from D-Rock. Yesterday, my 5-year-old daughter was talking about earning more dollar bucks. I said they are called many things: dollars, bucks, dollar bills, cash, or money. And then I paused and said, wait, scratch that. It's not money, it's currency. You have me self-censoring with my 5-year-old, Mike. What do you think of that?
I think it's very gratifying, actually, that I sort of went on this mission of, it's very, very important to use the correct language so that we understand each other and we fully communicate what we actually mean. Language is a very, very important thing. And I'm actually having an effect. I sort of went out on this mission. It was back in 2006 or 2005. I was on stage with Robert Kiyosaki. It was the first time he had me in front of a really large crowd at the Los Angeles Convention Center. And it was like 5,000 people. And he brought me out to tell them about when Nixon took us off of the gold standard and the consequences. And when he introduced me, he said that in 1971, the dollar ceased being money and became currency. And this light bulb just came on, and I went, wow. And the further I delved into this, the more that in the Federal Reserve Act, when they created the Federal Reserve, it said that Federal Reserve notes have to be backed 40% by lawful money. What does that make the Federal Reserve note? It's either currency or it's unlawful money. So I really decided that I was going to make this a mission, and that when people understand the difference between currency and money, when the majority of the population understands that, the great opportunity of the great gold and silver rush of the 21st century will be over with. It's that difference that it makes all the difference. So it's very gratifying, this tweet.
Yeah.
Hey, and if I could just chime in and congratulate you there, Mike, because cultural change comes slowly. There's a famous quote by Max Planck. He was talking about the scientific community, but he said, progress happens one funeral at a time, meaning you have to let the guys with the old ideas die out to let the younger people with the new ideas, step into the sunlight and bloom. And so, with your crusade here of trying to educate people about money and the difference between money and currency, yes, we can educate, adults that are watching it right now, but the real power comes by educating the next generation about this. And so that it lives on, and hopefully by influencing them, they stand up to recognize these principles from early on in life and fight to protect them. So it's great to hear this guy's telling his 5-year-old daughter about this.
Yes, it is. The only thing I would say is it's more self-correcting as opposed to self-censoring. I think we'd rather use that word to describe this. Well, before we get on to meme of the day, remember you can download Mike's book for free. The link is below here. If you've not read it, it's all still applicable today. You can do so for free. So, Mike, we have a great meme of the day. So tell us about this one.
Okay, this is great. It's how beautiful it is to find someone who asks for nothing but your company. And then there's Karl Marx down there at the bottom going, give me your company. So I want to thank everybody for watching. See you later, guys.
Bye, Mike.
See you, Mike and Adam. See you next time.
Take care, Jeff.